Today is an important day.
This is a very important day.
This is an important day.
It will do a better job of protecting our kids and fighting crime.
Call it a joint effort. A total of 4 cabinet ministers helped roll out the Liberals' plan to legalize marijuana in this country. It was an election promise and one they hope will be implemented by Canada Day next summer. But much is still up in the air. Let's bring in the Sunday Scrum to hash out the details. Joining us today, freelance columnist Susan Riley and John Ibbotson of the Globe and Mail. They're both in Ottawa. Thanks for joining us, folks, on the holiday weekend here. But what did you make of the announcement that was made this week?
Well, first of all, for those doubting Thomases or doubting Susans who thought the bill would never see the light of day, there it is. We have legislation that would make Canada the first country in the developed world nationally to legalize the use of marijuana. You wouldn't know it, though, as in terms of being, a party bill, if you had watched the rollout, those incredibly grim ministers who sounded as though there were a funeral underway. But of course, the Liberals want to show that they're serious about this, that this is not a, hey, we can all smoke pot bill. It's a, we're getting cannabis out of the hands of organized crime bill. Still, the question, I think, and we can talk about this a bit further down the road, but the question is, given all of the questions in the bill itself, the difficulty of getting it through the House and the coordination with the provinces, the July 1st deadline is the real question. How are they going to get it done in time?
Susan, what did you think of the rollout?
I thought, talk about buzzkill. I mean, they definitely looked like they were warning everybody that some disaster was about to befall us. I think that reflects, though, or they're very aware of, I would say, a deep ambivalence in the public, or maybe it's just within me. I feel very ambivalent about this this issue myself. That doesn't mean to say that I deny the logical arguments for decriminalization. There really isn't any argument against it from a point of view of logic. I think it's just a concern about the public health impact, a variety of unanswered concerns. Colorado, which as we know has legalized, I think 2012, I think, was when they legalized marijuana. They have not seen an uptick in usage necessarily, so I don't think that's an issue. But I'm highly dubious about the argument that the government keeps insisting on, that somehow this is going to get rid of organized crime, that there's not going to be street corner dealers anymore. I think there still will be street corner dealers. They will just be dealing other substances. Well, let's put it this way. I've spent a lot of time covering crime in my previous incarnations as a journalist, a lot of it involving drugs, crack in the 80s, marijuana, grow-ops. And I made a few phone calls and talked to a few people who may or may not have made their money in the past from this kind of business. And I said, what do you think of this? And they said, we're not worried at all. And I said, why? And they said, we'll beat them on quality and we'll beat them on price. So there is a lot of lack of fear out there amongst the criminal element and perhaps trepidation from the public. Does anyone think it was odd that the Prime Minister himself wasn't there? Susan, I'll start with you. Yes, I did. He's there for, every time somebody opens an envelope, he's on hand usually. But I think it reflects his own ambivalence, or at least I shouldn't say his own ambivalence, but his awareness that this is not necessarily a political winner. We'll see. We'll see how it unfolds. As John pointed out, there's a lot of obstacles still. The people who would be most happy about it, I would think, would be millennials or people who, already use marijuana quite regularly. He's courted the youth vote, and so I guess this is a promise he didn't feel that he could break. But again, it may just fizzle out and come to nothing. That may happen too. John, what did you think of his? Many thought that it was probably a good thing that the announcement wasn't made on the 20th of April, 4/20, but still, the PM wasn't there, was he? No, but this bill, I think, is part of a suite of promises that the Liberals made, perhaps not expecting that they would be able to form government. It's up there with
the promise to reform the electoral system, which has been scrapped, the promise to put an end to conversion of home delivery to communal mailboxes, which is probably also going to get scrapped. This was this was when they were in third place, looking for votes, looking for any particular group that they could sweep into the net, and so they made the promise, and in this case at least, they feel compelled to deliver on it. But it's not something for the Prime Minister to stand in the House of Commons and say, "This is a great and grand day. We can all smoke pot legally now." Also, there is a big legal question about this, and that is the question of impairment. We have spent decades successfully convincing people that you should not drink and drive. The changes to the criminal code, the changes to advertising, the changes in behavior around teenagers. Governments have worked very hard to make it socially, not just legally, but socially unacceptable to drink and drive. Now we're going to have people smoking and driving. And how do we measure impairment? That's a question that no jurisdiction has really successfully answered yet. What is an impaired driver who's been smoking pot? And secondly, the means of testing for impairment involves at the least asking people to give up saliva. And that could be an invasion of their privacy. There are courts that have grave reservations, I think you'll find, about compelling people to give up saliva. It's one step away from compelling them to give up blood. So until those issues are settled in the courts as well as in Parliament, this still remains an open question.
A lot of open questions about this, and especially things like provinces saying, with this being downloaded to us, we can't do this in less than a year and a half. So the debate will continue on this topic, for sure.